Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Planning Committee meeting today, the 24th of June. For those of you who are watching on the webcast or YouTube channel, my name is Iona Parker. I'm Councillor Iona Parker. I'm the Chair of the Planning Committee. So welcome to members of the public here and members and also officers. So we'll move on to the agenda for this evening. First item, apologies for absence. We are all here this evening, all present and correct, so we have no apologies. So move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to Code of Conduct? Councillor Monday.
Thank you, Chair. I have two. As Chair of House of Town Council, and the fact that the Council owns the land on which Courthouse Sports Ground sits, I'll leave the room for item 25-00289 full. And also, Chair of Council, I have spoken in depth and had an opinion on the other application for Halstead, which is 25-00530 full. So I'll leave the room at that time as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. Councillor Finken.
Very similar, Chair. I'll be declaring a non-registrable interest in both B and C as a House of Town Councillor for both, and I will be leaving the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Finken. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest, please, in agenda item 5C 25/00530 full. Land adjacent to Butler Road car park. Whilst I was portfolio holder for health and communities at this council, I too had a number of conversations with the charitable trust around methods and ways to bring the area into viable use. So I too shall leave and not take part in the debate or vote. Thank you.
So 3 people leaving for those 2 items. That's fine. Next item on the agenda is item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes we have ready are the minutes of the 3rd of June. Do you wish that I sign those as the correct record?
Move 3rd of June, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Can I have a show of hands? Thank you, members. Item 4 on the agenda is public question time. We don't have any registered speakers under this item, so we'll now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the planning applications for this evening. The first application we're going to consider is application item number 5A. This is to be found on page 5 of your agenda. This is application number 24/02576 REM, land west of Bors Tie Road in Silverend. And we do have a speaker this evening, Mr. Fosterick. So if you'd like to come to the table and press the button, then you have 3 minutes to make your statement. Yeah. So
good evening, everybody.
Would you like to sit down, or are you happy standing? Right. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, right. When the original plans were submitted for everyone to comment on, most neighbours objected to the fact they would be overlooked, even though their gardens backed onto the new building gardens, making the distance greater. One neighbour even commented on the fact that a proposed property was very close to their boundary, which would affect their privacy. The plans were changed to allow the neighbours with back-to-back gardens to now have the allotments behind them. The other comment was also acted upon by changing the 2-storey house to a bungalow. As previously stated in other comments, we have serious concerns about our privacy and safety. The report states that planning policies are designed to seek to protect rear elevations facing into private rear gardens rather than windows into side elevations. How can this be justified? Our windows that can be overlooked are in the most habitable room. We can't change our living room. We didn't put the windows in. These were approved initially by the council. The The report goes on to state that the erection of the proposed 1.8 metre boundary fence would provide adequate eye-level screening. 1.8 metres is equal to 5 feet 10. I am over 6 feet tall, so I would be able to look over the fence at eye level. This will also be the case for occupants of the new dwellings. Lastly, the report states that while the impact on our dwelling would be significant, it is not enough to warrant refusing planning permission. The new developments now show a bike shed at the end of their gardens. This means potentially new neighbours could have an unobstructed view into our main living area and even touch our windows from the end of their gardens whilst at their bike sheds. This poses a severe security risk and, more importantly, a privacy problem. We are not opposed to new development and understand the need for these houses. However, like our neighbours, we feel that we should have been given more consideration if the allotments had been moved further along. We wouldn't have this issue and our privacy rights would not be compromised. So once again, we kindly request that our comments be taken into account before approving the plans.
Thank you, Mr Roswick. So we'll now move on to the officer presentation, which I believe is going to be given by... Oh, sorry, I thought you were on a... Yes, sorry, Mr Spencer. Yes, you're on this application too, yep. Okay.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Olivier Spencer, the planning agent representing Bellway Homes. Outline permission was granted in 2023 for 94 dwellings on the land west of Borsty Road, Silver End. That approval established the principal development, granted detailed consent for the access, and secured over £1.6 million in planning contributions for education, health, sport, play equipment and other improvements in the district. Extensive pre-application engagement has taken place over the last 16 months, including discussions with officers from Braintree District Council and Essex County Council, and presentations to Silver End Parish Council, Braintree's Members Forum and other stakeholders. This culminated in the submission of a Reserved Matters application in December last year. The detailed proposals currently before you include 94 new homes, 37 of which will be affordable homes, over 1.5 hectares of public open space, with a local equipped area for play and allotments and a sustainable drainage system. The proposals comprise a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties, including masonettes, houses and bungalows. Every new home will comply with the nationally described space standards and will benefit from an EV charger, solar PV and high-speed fibre broadband. The homes will be laid out either side of a new tree-lined spine road that runs through the site and will be set back from Borsty Road behind new drainage basins and other green space. The new dwellings have been designed in a simple contemporary appearance to reflect the wider character of Silver End, with a particular emphasis on horizontal lines, hipped roofs and white rendered or buff brick or yellow stock brick exteriors. The proposals include the planting of 219 new trees and over 1,600 metres of new hedgerow, which will result in a substantial net gain compared to the removal of just 223 metres of existing hedgerow. The proposals also include measures to enhance biodiversity, such as wildflower planting, meadow areas, integrated bird and bat boxes and hedgehog highways. During the processing of the application, amendments have been made to the plans to increase front garden depths, incorporate additional street trees and resite the play area further from the setting of the listed building. Most recently, Plot 40 has been changed from a 2-storey house to a bungalow to minimise impacts on existing residents to the south. Finally, there are no outstanding objections from statutory consultees, and the Council's officers have seen fit to recommend the scheme for approval. With this in mind, I respectfully request that members follow this advice and grant consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Spencer. Now, we don't actually have any more speakers on this item, so I will now move to Mel. No, I think it's your turn now, Mel. Thanks.
Good evening, members. The application before you this evening is a reserved matters application in respect to the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale in relation to the outline planning permission 21000850/out, which was granted on appeal in January 2023. I won't read out the rest because you've read that in my report already. Just for recollection, members may remember when the outline application came to committee a number of years ago, and then more recently we've had the application for the temporary construction access temporary construction access, which was just up here, and that came to committee earlier this year. So here's the application site on the north side of the village of Silverend, and then Bors Tie Road runs in a diagonal fashion to the eastern side of the application site. Just to put in context, this is an aerial photograph of the site, and this brown area is the application site, and you can see that the built edge of Silverend to the north abuts the southern boundary of the application site. We've got some photographs of the application site, so these are all taken from Bors Tie Road. So these show the properties that back onto the site from the existing part of the village, and then a little bit further along, and you can see in this one here where the building ends, and then the countryside views continue. And then this is at I call it the top end of the site. Apologies for that. The top end of the site, where you're driving out of the village. You can see in the background the properties in the existing roads in Silverend, and then this is the edge of the site here. You can just make out the Harris fencing, and this is the construction work that has started on site for the temporary access. So moving on to the layout. So this is the layout that there's been some discussion over, as Mr. Spencer alluded to, in terms of prior to the REM application coming in, and also since the application has been with us in December. We've got the Central Spine Road, which is like the main road through the site, with a number of blocks of developments, as a mixture of house types, bedroom numbers and storey numbers as well. The allotments are placed down here, and the play area is in the top corner here, with then suds basins either side of the main entrance, where it fronts onto Bors Tie Road. This was just to remind members, this slide was just to remind members that the access for this proposal has already been approved when the appeal was allowed a few years ago. So this shows you where the permanent access would be, that would serve all of the dwellings off of Bors Tie Road. The next few slides show you visualisations of various street scenes within the site. So these are plots 82 to 86 that are set behind some tree planting, their parking in front, and properties behind. We've then got a view of the top of the Central Avenue. So this is where you would first turn into the site. So this is what you would see from Bors Tie Road on the left-hand side if you were driving out of the village. We've also got a section through here to show you the width between, or the depth between the proposed properties with the front gardens, tree planting, pavements, road, and then again pavement, trees, front gardens and property. The next few slides show illustrative street scenes, which I think are quite useful in terms of they put the properties in context. So this is one of the street scenes. So this is starting at plot 29 and then runs through to plot 11. And then we've got a smaller run here from 7 back to 4. And then this is then the part of the Spine Road coming in. So you can see we've got the street trees proposed, and then we've got those different materials proposed, but then the continuity of that same hip roof design. Again, some more street scene views. These are plots 90 through to then 94, and then 77 on the end. And then these are plots 4 through to 1. This is the last street scene. So here you can see we've got some of the bungalows proposed, and then we've got a terrace of 3 in this bottom street scene here. But you can see that whilst there's variety, there's also continuity between the house types, particularly with the roof design. The next few slides, I don't know why there's a bit missing in that one. It didn't look like that when I finished it. I
Madam
apologise
Chairman,
for that.
I was going to ask that question. If you go to look, where's plot 32 gone? Because there's plot 32 but nothing there.
It's a pair of houses. It's a pair of bungalows.
It's just where the number is.
So plot 32 should be.
Further to the
Yeah, sorry.
I get it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because you can make out there's the two front doors. Yeah. I thought we'd lost a house there. So we've got some floor plans and elevations of those. So this is one of those bungalows that we were just talking about. So this is one of the pairs. I'm not sure why that white section is there. It wasn't like that when I finished with it, I'm sure. But we can see the design of the bungalows there. These are the floor plans for the masonettes. So we can see on the ground and then the first floor, these are the 2-bedroom masonettes. These are known as the, and then we've got the elevations that tally up with those floor plans. So you can see here the 2 different front doors. The next property is the stationer and the bookbinder property. So we've got floor plans and elevations there. I haven't provided all of them, don't worry. You're not going to get all 94. The next house type is the Osler. So this is a semi-detached property. So we've got the floor plans and elevations. And then we've got another semi-detached property, which is the Crittle, which has got the entrance actually on the side rather than the front. And then this is the floor plans for a property called the Colker, which is a detached property. And then we've got the elevations. And the last one I'm showing you is a corner turner property known as the Jeweller. So that's the floor plans in an L shape, and then we've got the elevations there. The next few slides show the proposed landscaping master plan for the site. So you can see at the front of the site where it fronts onto Borsty Road, it's fairly open with the SUDS features either side of the main entrance. We've got the play area for children up at the top here, and then there is to keep, there was a fair amount of discussion during the life of the pre-application and the application in terms of setting back development on this side here to create a softer edge, softer new edge to Silver End. And then we've got allotments at the bottom here. And then you can also make out on here the proposed street trees throughout the site as well. This plan here just shows the amenity area. So this is land that is not going to be private back gardens, but is accessible for any of the residents within the site. The next slide relates to 42 Broomfield, which is what the gentleman spoke to earlier, and I thought it would just be useful for members. It is detailed within the officer report, but this is a zoomed-in version of where number 42 sits and its side elevation, which is just where my cursor is at the moment, and it relates to the relationship with property or plots 42 and 43. And it was just to clarify to members that both of these gardens are have depths of 15 metres, and there is a proposed 1.8 metre boundary fence that officers consider will provide eye-level privacy. I just thought it would be useful for providing some extra clarification on that, because we had a member of the public here raising that point. So turning to the summary and conclusion, Officers consider that the scheme is well designed and is high quality. Officers have critiqued and negotiated further improvements throughout the process, and the appearance, landscape, layout and scale are considered acceptable. There are a couple of updates that I wanted just to provide you. In terms of the market housing mix, which is quoted in paragraph 11.1.13, there was a slight mix-up on the numbers. So it should read 17 two-bed units, 30 three-bed units and 10 four-bed units. So that it's the 3 and the 4 have slightly changed. Also got some condition updates. So condition 3 here, the trigger for the condition has been slightly amended. Rather than relating to the whole of the development, it's taking each plot or dwelling in turn. And so that's the revised wording is there in red. And then it's the same thing for condition 5 in terms of the trigger. The trigger would be per dwelling or plot rather than the whole development. It's also a couple of amendments for the approved drawing list. Officers recommend that the Landscape and Ecology and Management Plan, known as the LEMP, should be removed from the approved drawing list, and as this is currently being considered under a separate discharge of condition application. There's a couple of drawings there, the amenity areas plan and the sweat path plan, where the drawing numbers were just slightly incorrect, so they have been amended. The correct drawings is there, correct drawing numbers is the red text there. And also we consider that because we have a proposed condition about the noise impact assessment, I think it's one of the last conditions in the appendix, it was considered necessary to add the noise impact assessment to the list of approved drawings. So the recommendation is to approve the reserved matters subject to the conditions as set out in Appendix 1 and the updated conditions 3 and 5 and the updated approved plans as per this presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mel, for taking us through that. Members, over to you. Councillor Diamond.
I'll be brief. This seems like a very well thought through application. I'm really pleased to see the mix of types of housings. You've got masonettes, bungalows, 3 and 4 bedroom homes. This does seem really positive. It looks like it matches a lot of local need. I'm also really pleased to see there's a lot of affordable housing in the mix as well. And again, within the affordable housing, they've got a lot of mixtures of housing types which will really fit local needs. So subject to listening to what the other members have to say, this seems like a very positive application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diamond. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, the decision was made on the appeal. This council refused it and it went to appeal, and the inspector came out with a classic comment that he would have granted it irrespective of what our local plan and our 5-year land supply said. And obviously we'll welcome the residents to the village, we always do, whether a site is granted on appeal or not. They're the residents of Silver End and we will do our best to represent them. But I thought I'd make a few comments to put in context, and then I've got a couple of questions if I could of officers, please. So this is another site where the selling points in terms of public infrastructure are play equipment, allotments and attenuation basins. This is the 6th major housing site granted on appeal in the ward that Councillor Bob Wright and I represent, and none of them have provided a doctor's, a shop, a community building, a primary school, a preschool or any of the other supporting significant infrastructure we need. So we're talking about a complete failure of the planning system to deliver sustainable development. So what this development will do, albeit as I say, the residents will be welcome, is to put more pressure on existing services, of which the GP is the #1 issue. And on that, I would make the point I've made before, that Braintree District Council owns the doctor's surgery in Silver End. This is the 7th housing estate built in the village since the doctor's surgery was built in the 1990s. But the catchment for that doctor's surgery is not just Silver End, it's also Cressing, in NHS terms, although a lot of people from Cressing will go to the Braintree doctors. But it's putting ever more pressure on the surgery. I noticed that and we're not a key stage village, Silver End's not a key stage village. I noticed that, I agree with what was just said about the housing mix, you know, that is reasonable. And also the officers have said PD rights have been removed, which I think is important given its countryside edge. But in terms of what the representative from Bellway said about net gain, it's very easy to talk in terms of numbers. So he said, well, you know, a couple of 100 metres of the front hedge. The front hedge is an established native hedge, and the whole thing's going. I tried working with officers to try and save parts of it, but the whole thing's going. And it's very easy to say it's going to be replaced and we're going to plant more. If you work in this area, as I do, trying to establish new trees and hedges in the era of climate change is not easy, especially with these hot, dry springs we're getting. And if you go around the development sites in the area, many of the trees are struggling. Not all of them, but many are. So it's not a numbers game, and losing mature native planting is a very poor thing. And then coming on to my two questions, as per what the issues the speaker from the House in Broomfield said, I entirely agree with him. And I just wanted to refer members to what it says on page 25. Officers consider that the impact upon the existing dwelling is significant, but they're not recommending refusal of permission. I wouldn't expect officers to say they're going to refuse permission, but what I would have expected is a negotiation to avoid the impact being significant, because there's been a lot of time since the appeal decision was made where that could have been done. So I'm wondering, if officers, my first question is can anything be done now to help that resident and others who back on to the site in the Broomfield? And my final point, Madam Chairman, and I think my strongest one, is how we are so comprehensively ignored as local councillors and residents. Members who were at the forum when this site was discussed will remember that there was a heartfelt presentation by one of the parish councillors, Ian Ashford, about the need to have improvements to safety of Borstai Road. And yet it says here on page 24, the speed limit is not required to be lowered to make this development acceptable. He attended 2 fatal crashes on that road, and it's stayed with him ever since, and I'm not surprised. There have been 4 in total fatal crashes along that road. One, I think, was last year, if I remember right. Vehicles routinely go into the village above the 30-mile-an-hour limit, as the parish council will tell you. And it's not just the parish council and, quotes, some residents who've raised this issue. It's both of us district councillors and the county council have been trying for years to get that speed limit reduced. And we now have a situation where there's going to be this development on one side of the road and the other development on the other side of the road that's been fully built out in a 40 limit, with the county council saying that's fine there, but at the other end of the village, they extended the 30 limit outwards where 2 housing estates were built on the side of the road. So the county council are completely inconsistent in this matter. And not only have they rejected out, and I'm not blaming district officers for this, this is a county matter. Not only have they rejected our requests on this, they've also, of course, as Councillor Bowles-Flint will know, made a complete horlicks of our requests for the new footway link at Ty Green. They refused to provide a pedestrian crossing from the development at Horbush Green to the primary school in Cressing, and infamously, despite hundreds and hundreds of houses being built, they turned down a request for a zebra crossing across Rickstones Road on the Rivenhall-Whitson boundary. So, quite frankly, I'm quite glad. I'm not a huge fan of LGR, but I'm quite glad Essex County Council are going to be abolished if they're going to carry on doing this, because they ignore us. And not only is there a sustainability deficit, there is a democratic deficit. So my final question is, how are these residents going to get into the village centre to access the services walking along Borstai Road? And is there anything we can do at this late stage to get that speed limit reduced? Thank you.
Well, if you'd like to come back on those 2 questions.
Thank you. I could probably talk loud enough, to be honest with you. So if I go back to, I think the first question was to do with the relationship with 42 Broomfield. If I go back to that slide, it might be useful to have that up while we're talking about it. So at this late stage, there would be, in terms of reciting the properties, I don't think that would be an option. There could be an option for making the fence, I mean, not along the entire boundary, the southern boundary of the site. I'm not sure it's needed for the vast majority of the southern boundary, but there could be a case for making the fence a bit taller. If that was something that members would be happy with. I don't know whether you would have a height in mind in terms of, you know, potentially maybe 2 metres. I don't know whether or not that would be sufficient. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, as I say, I'm not sure it would be necessary to have 2 metres the entire length of the boundary, but that's something. And we have a. I'll remind myself. We do have a boundary treatment condition or means of enclosure. So yeah. So condition 7 requires those details to come in anyway. So part of that discharge of condition process, we can have discussions with the developer and ensure that there is a section where the height is increased. Okay, we could also add an informative to advise the developer that that's what we would be expecting to see. The next question was to do with the speed limit. Just to sort of put in context, I mean, it is set out within the committee report. So as members are aware, the access where it is been approved at the outline stage, that was based on the speed limit that's there at the moment on Borsty Road. So the Highways Authority, when they made comments on that outline application, they were satisfied that that access with that speed limit was sufficient, and they provided sufficient visibility displays in either direction. The appeal inspector agreed with that, and so that's the position that we're in. At the forum, there was a discussion about moving the speed limit from the kind of village side of the site to the non-village side. There have been some discussions on that, but as far as, I mean, I did check with Essex County Council today, but as far as they were aware, there hasn't been any application to change the speed limit along there. I did have an update. Have you got that email from? Okay, because I can't get it on this one. Sorry. Did have an update from the applicant's agent, who said that, I mean, there are there's the upgrading of the bus stops, and then there's going to be permanent accesses to those bus stops along Borsty Road, which will change the character of that part of Borsty Road. And if ECC then are wanting to then seek to progress any speed limit change, then they're welcome to do that. But it doesn't sound at this stage that Bellway would be wanting to do that.
It's okay, thank you, Chair. Just to add to that, so following the members' forum where it was raised, Councillor Abbott, both Melanie and I attended a meeting with the highway officers and one of the developers' representatives. So we certainly relayed the sentiment that was raised at the forum, because as you said, it was very strong. So we've stressed that, and we'll certainly pick that up with them again. So in answer directly to your question, is there anything that we can do as a planning committee or planning authority? There isn't, because of the scope of the outline permission. But as officers, what we can do is say we will continue to press the Essex officers to make sure that when the technical details are approved around the footway and the bus stop that Mel was referring to, that those changes in as positive way as possible change the character of the road, because that's the issue for the Highway Authority. They have said they are willing to consider changing the speed limit, but it's subject to the character of the road changing. So notwithstanding your point that you've now got housing on both sides of the road as you come into the village, it's that feel as you come in. So what we've suggested with the highway officer that was involved in it is that bus stop improvement and the footway, which helps to contribute towards that change in character. So we're hoping that those changes, which hopefully will be approved, will then contribute to the change in character, which will allow Essex to consider the change in speed limit and reduce it to 30 miles an hour. So we'll continue to push that, and we'll certainly keep repeating the views of the planning committee members and that was raised at the forum, but we can't require the developer to do it, and there's nothing we can do for the reserved matters at this stage beyond what I've just said, is which we'll try and work with the Highway Authority to deal with it, but like I say, we can't promise.
Well, we're grateful for that on both points. But as I say, it's not good enough. We're supposed to live in a democracy, and at every single tier, parish, district, county, council, representatives, we want that speed limit reduced. And I would make the point that at the other end of the village, where they did reduce the speed limit, it's beyond where the footways are, and it actually starts where there is no development on either side of the road. So they are being completely inconsistent, and we're interested in making things as safe and sustainable as we can for residents. So whatever you can do to impress upon them that they actually need to listen, we would be grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I think point taken by Neil. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I find myself agreeing with a few of the points that Councillor Abbott has made this evening. As a committee, unfortunately, we all know that cumulatively we have no bearing on various applications that come if they're in one particular area, and we have to take them as a case-by-case basis. It's for the Highways Authority to plan accordingly using computerised traffic models to think about the cumulative impacts of a number of developments when they're planned around villages. Notwithstanding that, I think, as Councillor Abbott often alludes to, I think this area has had its fair share of development over the years, and obviously it would have been great if infrastructure had been developed alongside that. Just a point on the GP services and the GP provision. Yes, we do own the GP surgery, but we don't own the business that goes on inside it. That's for the CCG and for the NHS to coordinate. And again, we know that as a planning committee, we certainly would like more in that area, but we have no bearing on that. All we can do is make our concerns known at this various CCG groups and try and get change made as planning applications come forward and the area increases in size with the number of residents. Just on the point of the speed limit, and I don't want to labour the point, it was a point that was brought up and discussed at length at the members' forum. And it's good to hear that there could be some changes that help push this in the right way. I think if anyone from Essex County Council is listening, you have a moral obligation to change this speed limit in this area. I think there is sufficient enough evidence to show that if there is an area that could benefit from a 30-mile-an-hour limit, then it's certainly alongside this development, and the two should have gone hand in glove in this instance, especially when you bear in mind the other end of the village, as has been pointed out and agreed. It isn't alongside a development frontage. It's a 30-mile-an-hour limit before it reaches any noticeable development on that side of the village. On the plus side, I certainly agree with what Councillor Diamond has said. It's good to see a development that has got a good mix of housing for people that want to move into the area. It's great that there's masonettes that are one bedroom. We always like developments that have got a good sustainable mix and attract people that are looking to get onto the property ladder, and again a good mix of affordable housing as well. I'll leave it there and see what other members of the committee have to say. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I would add on in relation to the speed limit. Obviously, there's a housing development here with a large number of houses coming onto that road in that section. Hopefully, that's another additional thing that Highways take into account. Does any other member wish to? Councillor Schreer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't intend to go over the points that have been made already by colleagues, because I agree with quite a few of them. It's just really to come back with regards to condition 9, refuse and recycling, where it says it requires details of the location and design. Is that taking into account the change in methodology that we have agreed with the number of bins and the capacity of that design to accommodate those, as it states here, for the recycling materials and separation and storage areas. So I think that's important. And also I notice there's nothing here about effectively any sustainability into water. I realise that this is on appeal, but I do think as a council that we need to start thinking with regard to the developments about water usage as well. And I think this dry spring and the weather is indicating the use, also taking into account the rapid increasingly price in water and giving the opportunity to developers to make this easier for our residents across Braintree District. Thank you.
Could I just come back on your query to do with the recycling condition? What number condition was it? Did you say?
It's condition 9 on 11.8.1. It just requires details of the location and design of the refuse bins, but there's nothing there that states that it will be able to accommodate the future plans as indicated by Braintree District Council.
My condition 9 refers to compliance with the noise impact assessment. And condition 5 is one that's a compliance condition, and it just requires compliance with the details on the already approved plans. I'm just wondering if you're looking at a different condition 9.
Well, it's the one
Sorry.
it's the one that's on the attached to the calendar tonight. So.
Page 27, 11.8.1 refers to condition 9.
Oh, sorry, that's condition 9 from the outline. Sorry. Yeah, so in the description at the end.
On condition 5, but it doesn't actually indicate that it's going to be flexible enough to take all of that. So is that the case? I just want reassurance.
So where the way that condition 5 is worded is that it's a compliance condition. So the details that have already come in as part of the Reserve Matters application have been considered by the waste team, and they've considered them to be acceptable. And we've put condition 5 on just to ensure that the storage, the refuse bins, recycling material storage areas and bin collection points as indicated on those approved drawings. So one of the approved drawings is a refuse layout, a strategy. So those details were considered appropriate from our waste team, and that's why we've then put that condition on. So by putting that condition on, we're then approving the details required by the condition 9 on the original outline. Sorry, has that got you even more confused? Sorry. So the waste team have looked at the details that came in.
Yes, but did they look at the details before what was known and the change in policy? That's what I'm.
No, they would have looked at them prior to the policy, because we've had the application in since December.
So what I'm asking, is there an opportunity here to put an informative or to change that policy to accommodate the waste details going forward, to accommodate our change in policy and the number of bins for all housing?
We put an informative on, I mean, because they're quite significant changes, aren't they? Sorry, put you on that spot.
It's just in the interests of the residents when they move in there to future-proof.
I absolutely get the point, Councillor Swear is just trying to think of the best way to deal with it, because the description of development specifically refers to the approval of the details. I think what we could do is we could put in, I would suggest we could put an informative on, which is that the developer reviews the bin storage areas on the approved plans and considers the need to submit a non-material amendment application to amend that, because I think in most cases it will be a simple question of putting down a slightly larger hard standing for an additional wheelie bin or something within the back garden. So I think that could be dealt with as a non-material amendment subsequently. I think the danger is if we can't really put a condition on to require the details as part of the Reserve Matters, because we're trying to approve that. So I think that would address your point. It could be treated as a non-material amendment, which I think the developer would be willing to do, and I think that would be sensible from their point of view, because they're going to have to supply the bins and they're going to have upset residents if the bin storage areas aren't big enough from when they move in. So I think that would be the best way to deal with it if members were happy to do that.
Could I just come back on the point that if any bins are on the street scene side, and I think road facing side, that actually they're also considered as a visual design to actually hide the bins to improve the street scene as well, because the housing, as has been mentioned already, the development has had a lot of consideration for the street scene, and again, I think if there's an opportunity there for an informative for the developer to integrate the bins into some form of hidden structure.
Yes, most of it is, yeah.
Yeah, we can, yeah, we'll think about the wording of the informative on that. I think, from my knowledge of the scheme, I think the bin storage is predominantly, if not exclusively, to the side or rear of the properties, but we can cover that just in case there is anything which we can't recall just off the top of our heads, but yeah, we can deal with that. Thank you.
Any other member wish to say anything? I mean, the only other comment I would like to make is that I appreciate the effort that's gone into the design to try and sort of mirror the historic design of Silver End, which I think a lot of effort has gone into that. We would like to move officers' recommendation. This will be with those two informatives, one about the increasing the height of the fence around number 42 to 2 metres, and the other one is about the waste, reviewing the waste storage area. Is that fine? Anybody want to move that? Councillor Ritchie?
Happy to move officers' recommendations with those two amendments, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Diamond. All those in favour of granting this application? And all those against? Abstentions? 1 abstention. Thank you, members. That application has been granted. So, do members of the public wish to, presumably don't want to stay for the rest of it. And then Councillor Monday, a couple of members are leaving the room as well. So, members, we'll now move on to item 5B of the agenda. This is application number 25/002894. This is at the Courtauld Sports Ground, Colchester Road, Halstead. We don't have any speakers on this item, so we'll move to the officer presentation, which is going to be given by Harrison.
Thank you. Good evening, members. So this application concerns the installation of 2 tennis courts together with fencing and floodlighting at Courtauld Sports Ground in Halstead. So the site is located within an existing sports ground to the east of Halstead, and it's designated within the adopted local plan as an area for formal recreation. To the north of the site up here is an existing football pitch, and then further north are rugby pitches. There's a bowls club to the west of the site, and then an air training cadets facility directly to the east. And the site is approximately 750 metres from the main high street in Halstead, with a bus stop serving the site just outside the access, approximately here. This plot plan just shows the site on a somewhat closer scale. So you can see by virtue of the access to the air training cadets facility here, this area of land is somewhat divorced from the main body of the playing field to the north. You can also see the closest neighbouring residents are along Colchester Road to the south, with those on Fen Road to the east, buffered by the air training cadet facility. And then there's a public footpath link between Colchester Road and Fen Road that runs along here and the south of the site and diverts southwards to Colchester Road here. So turning to the site images, this image just shows the site as a whole from the adjacent car park, and you can make out the neighbouring residences on Colchester Road to the right, and then the air training cadet facility fenced off to the left of the image over here. This image then shows the area of from the existing playing field to the north, and you can make out the access to the air training cadet facility, which, as I said previously, divorces that main body. And then this is just a view from the south of the site on Colchester Road, showing the nearest neighbour and also the level differences that exist at the site from the road. And then from a closer vantage point, you can make out the car park beyond this structure and the entrance to that footpath link to Fen Road. And then this image just attempts to demonstrate the proximity of the site to that neighbour and also the nature of that footpath link and the fencing as well. So moving back to the plans, this plan shows the proposed court arrangement and its position on the site. So the court surfacing will be finished with a double layer porous asphalt surface painted in green, and the perimeter fencing will extend to 3 metres in height, forming a twin wire mesh between rectangular posts, and there are 9 floodlighting columns proposed with 10 luminaires that would extend to 6 metres in height. So this is another plan which just shows the court layout and dimensions in some more context. So on this plan you can more clearly identify the position of an acoustic fence to the south here, which was added to the proposal following an initial round of consultation. The position of the fence would extend for 30 metres along that southern boundary and has been chosen to mitigate noise impacts against this neighbour here. And it would be positioned near to the existing wire mesh fence separating the footpath as viewed on the final site image. The fence would extend to 2 metres in height and would only be partially visible above the neighbouring rear boundaries due to the existing close boarded fences that exist there. Environmental Health have regarded this fence as providing a good level of noise protection for these properties, and it's also acknowledged that general noise levels are anticipated to be vastly reduced compared to the existing football and rugby pitches, where at points you might have up to 30 players with coaches and spectators, and obviously in comparison that it's unlikely that people using these courts would rarely exceed 8 for 2 doubles matches ongoing. The elevational plan here just shows the position and the height of the columns and fencing, as well as the posts between the wire mesh. The arrangement of floodlit columns forms a primarily side-lit scheme, with 3 along the southern and northern sides, and then 1 to each end and a central column. So this arrangement is noted within the LTA guidance as being good for the control of glare and spillage, as well as allowing for lower column heights compared to a corner-lit scheme. And then in terms of floodlight overspill, the scheme has been designed sensitively to minimise this, given its proximity in particular to this southern neighbour. The primary impact will be on this dwelling, but in this regard, the position of the site should be noted within a suburban area, and a condition is imposed on the use of the floodlights beyond 9 p.m. The lux levels would only reach 1 at the rear boundary, as you can see on this plan to the right here, which is below the maximum values within suburban zones within the Institute for Lighting Professional Standards and BDC's adopted artificial lighting SPD. So turning to the key considerations and consultations, no objections have been raised by consultees. There was 2 neighbouring comments received prior to the addition of the acoustic fence, and following 2 further rounds of consultation, no further comments have been received. The lighting and noise impacts have both been considered acceptable from Environmental Health, though conditions are in place to safeguard this, and ECC Highways have raised no objection, and there's existing parking capacity, as well as noting that the site is within a fairly sustainable location where other modes of transport are also available. And then just by way of a member update, there are a couple of further conditions proposed. So the first of which relates to the provision of the acoustic fence being in place prior to the first use of the site. And then the second relates to details of the community use of the facility, so including details of pricing strategy, hours, management and review procedures. And then the third one just relates to the details of the tilt level below the horizontal for the floodlights located to either side at the centre of the court. So in summary, the principle of development is considered acceptable, and there will be no adverse impact upon neighbouring amenities or local character as a result of the proposal. And therefore, officers recommend that the application is granted subject to the conditions set out within Appendix 1 and the additional conditions. And apologies, that last slide should also refer to condition 13 as well.
Thank you, Harrison. Members, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, could you put back up the slide, please, on the tilt level, what it said, the wording?
On the condition?
Yeah. Should that be at the horizontal rather than below? And the horizontal tilt level's like that. So if you go below it, I don't know how they get.
Just to clarify the reasoning for that. So within the lighting assessment document, we've essentially got the tilt levels for there's 3 separate types of luminaires proposed. We've got the 2 tilt levels for 2 of them, and they are 30 degrees below the horizontal, and the other one is 23 degrees below the horizontal. But we don't have the tilt level for the other luminaire. So that condition was added quite late on just to safeguard and ensure that the tilt wouldn't be above the horizontal, essentially.
You mean below the vertical? It doesn't make sense, because horizontal is 0 degrees, vertical's like that 9 degrees. I'm just wondering. And looking at the Lux drawings, there was quite a significant overspill, so your drawings of what the lights look like, they're like almost like crayon drawings, but they look like the lights were horizontal. But looking at those overspill drawings, you've got quite a significant overspill, particularly at the ends of the courts, which suggests to me they're not horizontally tilted. So, sorry, but I'm just a bit confused about what it's trying to do.
So I think the key thing is to try and nail down the phrasing of the condition. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the horizontal tilt, flat to ground means 0 tilt. That means no light will go above the horizontal. If that's what the intention of that is, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So that is the intention.
Right.
So
it's just not worded very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies for that.
So maybe that needs a tweak. But yeah, so that's fine if that's the intention.
Yeah.
And I was going to say the other thing about the lights is that, I mean, overall, I think it's a good scheme and will be very well used. I think the 9 p.m. curfew is good. I think some of where we've granted schemes for much bigger flood lighting scheme to 10 p.m. Personally, I think in suburban areas or even edge of rural areas, that's too late. I think 9's a better time. And I think the acoustic fencing's sound move as well. So overall, I definitely support it and will vote for it. I just think we need to be clear about what the intention is on that condition.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, we'll have to, if it's okay with Neil, potentially just rephrase the condition. But yeah, that was the intention. So
we're happy to look at that wording afterwards just to make sure that's clearly expressed. Councillor Bass-Flint.
Can I just get it confirmed that those lights will only be on when somebody's playing on the court at night?
yeah, so that detail is in the application. I think there's also 15-minute timers, I think, beyond motion sensors. So, yeah, potentially I don't think we actually have a condition for that. So if necessary, we could look at that. But that detail was in the application.
Just to clarify, I think the intention isn't for the courts to be left sort of open access. So I think that if you were having an open access court, you'd have the lights on as soon as it becomes dark until the closing hour. And the idea is that it's controlled access, with the Town Council control of the bookings. So certainly the intention is that the lights would only be on, as Harrison said, when it's in operation. I think we probably need to, if we haven't got a condition on around the hours of the lighting and the sort of the time afterwards, because it's normal to have a short period of time afterwards for people to vacate the court and sort of leave safely and that. So we could cover that through a condition if that's what members wanted us to do.
I'd be happy with that.
So a condition on the hours of the lighting, as opposed to, in addition to hours of use, just to make that clear. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I welcome this coming forward. I know it's been a little while to get to this stage, and I understand that's been frustrating for members of the Town Council and probably some residents, but I think it has been really important to get this right, particularly on the lighting, because it is quite close to some residential properties. And I understand that there have been quite a lot of discussion around the right type of lighting or so on, and I'm happy that we seem to have got to a good place with that. I do think the scheme is very welcome. I think it will be well used. With regard to concerns about noise, well, it is an allocated sports site. There's already sports taking place on there, so I don't think one can necessarily put a great weight on that. The lighting was the more important thing. And yes, appreciate the hard work that's gone into this with Harrison and the and the various other bodies involved with trying to make sure that we get something that's very usable, but very acceptable with minimum impact onto local residents. So very happy to see it. Thanks.
If no other members got a question, can I just ask one other question, Harrison? I know one of the things that causes upset is the popularity of people playing paddle, but would it be played on a court like this, or is this is just for tennis? Good. Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Any member wish to ask anything or make any other comments? In which case, would anybody like to move officers' recommendation with those additional conditions?
I'll move it with those extra conditions.
With the additional conditions and the one about the lighting, hours of lighting. Thank you, Councillor Busman. And Councillor Holland seconding?
Yes.
All those in favour of that? That again is, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. So Councillor Ritchie, I think, is now leaving us. I think.
Know who your friends are.
Well, I think we'll be quorate, so I think you can leave. Yes, thanks, Richard. Right, so that now brings us on to item 5C on the agenda, was another Halstead application. This is application number 25/00530, full land adjacent to the car park at Butlers Road, Halstead. And we don't have any speakers on this, and Harrison is again going to give us the officer's presentation.
Thank you. So this application relates to land adjacent to the Butlers Road car park in Halstead. And the proposal follows an application approved in 2015 for the erection of a new community building. Although this permission was never implemented, the assessment identified contamination issues at the site, which this proposal seeks to remediate ahead of a new submission. Therefore, this proposal is solely for the removal of contamination, remedial and reinstatement works, and does not involve a change of use of the land or the erection of any buildings. So the site is located near the main Halstead High Street, with access available via Rosemary Lane to the east and Butlers Road to the west. There are industrial uses to the north and a mixture of residential and commercial uses elsewhere to the east, south and west of the site. Currently, the south and southwestern portion of the site operates as a car park, and the main site area up here is vacant. So as this is primarily a technical engineering operation, I thought it would be useful to firstly set out the scope of the proposed works. So the remediation works include the removal of grossly impacted soils and derelict infrastructure from the site, dewatering of contaminated pockets of groundwater, segregation or treatment of waste, the provision of clean cover in soft landscaped areas, and then further monitoring and upgrading where necessary. This levels plan, I appreciate, is somewhat unclear on the PowerPoint slide, so I do apologise, but just allows for an understanding of the reinstatement works to take place, and also you can more clearly establish the car park area from the proposed site area. And then on that point as well, the car park would remain operational during the course of the development. So the key to this assessment is therefore to ensure that sufficient detail has been provided to allow for further investigative groundworks to take place if permission is granted. So this plan just shows where the existing trial investigations have taken place in order to inform the detailed risk assessment that Environment Agency have commented on. And then this is just an existing and proposed site section, just to demonstrate that following the completion of the works, the land would be reinstated to its existing form. So moving on to the site photos, this image is taken from Butlers Road, with the car park to my right looking towards the main site area. This image is then from Broughton Drive, and again just shows the wider site area with a residential block visible to the rear of the site through the trees. And then this is an image of the site boundary from Rosemary Lane, which demonstrates that the site is largely obscured by existing trees, and you can also make out the industrial area to the right of the image here. And then from a similar vantage point, but this time looking into the site, you can see the vacant area and the car park to the left of the image. And then finally, just an image from within the car park where you can see the site area again is largely obscured by the existing trees. And then just on this point, no trees are proposed for removal. However, it's unclear if there would be an impact upon the root protection areas, as the full extent of contamination cannot be known until further investigative works have taken place. So with this in mind, a tree survey and protection plan has been required by condition, which should ensure their appropriate protection and that the land is adequately reinstated. And then given the nature of the works, the planning assessment is quite limited, as there's no change of use or character to the land and it's to be reinstated as it is now. A sufficient understanding of the existing contaminants and risks has been provided. However, the Environment Agency have requested conditions on further investigative works, monitoring and then verification. A construction management plan has also been requested from Highways to ensure that there would be no adverse impacts upon the local transport network. But as stated, the car park would remain fully operational. And then details of the trees and reinstatement works have already been touched upon in the presentation. So to summarise, the application is acceptable in principle, as there would be no change of use or building proposed, just remediation works to the land. So subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1, there are also no objections from statutory consultees, and officers therefore recommend that the application is granted subject to these. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. Members? Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This area of Housestead does need some renovations, so yeah, to see something kind of like moving in that area, I think it will be a positive for the town and that area of the town. So yeah, happy to agree with Officer's recommendation.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I support this. My only concern was if the trees were lost once the work starts. Hopefully that won't be the case, but there's actually another condition which says that if any tree comes out, that it has to be like for like, or sorry, one-for-one replacement. Hopefully it won't come to that, but that's quite reassuring that any trees lost would be replaced.
Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I agree with all the comments thus far, and I know the site quite well actually. And it's been decades, I think, of trying to get the contamination on the site resolved. And on condition 4, when it talks about the contamination monitoring, and it says that no development shall take place until a long-term monitoring and maintenance plan in respect to the contamination. So once all of this work is done, is that good enough? You know, because I'm just mindful that I know the history of the site and what the council have done to put the provision of the money by to see the centre built out, and that, you know, if the town didn't carry on with this, then the site might not happen. And has it gone? What, the money altogether? So okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I guess the point I'm making is, if all the work is done and the report is produced, are the officers content that an application is sort of shovel ready to go ahead? I guess is really my point, because I'm saying that in the context of we've waited so long for this to happen, and when I read that paragraph, I'm still not completely convinced that it's everything that's required. I guess that's really the point I'm making. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So that condition was recommended by the Environment Agency, and it's a monitoring condition. So I think, well, it's a monitoring plan. So I think the intention is just to safeguard future risks. I don't think it should have any impact on development moving forward, because I think we would only approve that provided we were content that the risks could be managed, essentially.
If I can just add to Harrison's answer, if that's okay. So, as I understand it, the applicant's looking to deal with the site and remediate, partly depending on what they find when they get into it. So they think they've got an understanding, but until they actually get into it, they're not entirely sure what they'll find and how they'll deal with it. What would happen is, as Harrison's explained, there's no proposals for a change of use or development of the site after the remediation works have been carried out. If in the future an application was made for planning permission which required a change of use, then one of the things that would be required as a condition of the planning permission would be evidence that the site is suitable for the use. So when contaminated land is remediated, there's different standards depending on what the ultimate use is. So if you had, off the top of my head as an example, a car park, that would need to be remediated to a different level to having a residential use on top, which is the most sensitive type. So we're not in a position, I believe, where we're saying it would be remediated to a level where such and such a thing could go on it or something else could go on it, because that's not what this is about. So that hopefully just adds some clarification around the remediation. And then just the point about the money, Councillor Bowers-Flint was helping out in terms of there was a couple of different sources of money, I think, around the community building. So I think what Councillor Bowers-Flint was referring to was there was some money which the council had allocated capital for, so that has been reallocated. But there is some Section 106 money which the council still holds, which can be used to provide a community building on Butler Road. So we're not here tonight to tell you one thing's happening or the Section 106 money has been used or anything like that, but just in terms of just a clarification, if a community building comes forward on the site, A, the planning permission or planning application will need to demonstrate it's safe to use, so this is potentially a stepping stone towards that, and B, there is some 106 money which could be used for that scheme if it were to come forward in the future. But I'd say that's just sort of wider context. What we're looking at tonight is just the remediation or the investigation and remediation of the site to the level. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. Councillor Beavers.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just very briefly as well just go back to that site plan of the car park where you're in Butler Road, beg your pardon, that one there. So behind those trees there is the pocket of land, and then to the right of that there is another sort of hard standing where people, I think there's another car park that people go down some steps into the Sainsbury's car park. But there has been a lot of antisocial behaviour in this area, and we've had the Essex bus that's come in and supported with young children, and a lot of them do go down into this piece of land there. And are we talking sort of heavy construction vehicles down there? Is it, I mean, I guess the point I'm making is it going to be sort of fenced off, or because when I first looked at the application, I sort of thought to myself, I do hope the young children realise that there's going to be some alterations going on here. That was just another concern. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think those details will come forward in the construction management plan. So at the minute, we're not quite sure how that would all work, but I'm sure it's something that we would take into account and safeguard.
Thank you, Councillor Bowers-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to confirm, the capital money that we was talking about that had been put aside for donkey's years for a community centre on this piece of land has been reallocated, but it's been reallocated to that area. So Halstead hasn't lost out on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beavers, one more.
Yeah, no, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to say I'm happy to move. If we've had a good debate on it, I'd be happy to move that. Thank you.
I'll find a seconder. Councillor Schwer, or did you want to make a comment?
Could I just make a quick comment, Madam Chairman? I support Councillor Beavers in the fact that this actual site has been doing nothing for a very long period of time, and I welcome the fact that for Halstead and the residents, that the investigation and potential remedial works is actually now potentially going to move ahead, and I think this opens up the opportunity for potential development for the assigned use in Halstead going forward, because it's very much needed and has been longed for by many residents and those villages around as well. So I do welcome progress on this, and I'm sure the construction management plan will take all the details and the comments that are being made tonight, and I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to grant this application with those additional conditions. All those in favour? Thank you, members. That is unanimous. So in that...
We'll check there's no councillors out.
Yes, please do. I think they might have gone. But we'll just check. So I think that's a no. So we'll now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is a tree preservation orders. So we have one application under item 6, and this is item number 6A, application number 25/01012 TPO. This is to the side of 16 Make Moors in Rain, and Neil is going to do the presentation on this one. We don't have any speakers. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So the application has been reported to Planning Committee because this is an application by the District Council to fell and remove a tree which is subject to a tree preservation order on land that we own. So it refers to one lime tree which is shown on the plan here, the location plan. So it's this one in brown here, 050Y, just to the side of number 16 here. So it's on amenity land within this development. So you can see there's a walkway, pedestrian walkway coming past here. It's obviously quite close to number 16 and its garden, and this is sort of amenity grassland space which is used by the community. So we've got a photo here which one of the tree officers took from February of this year. So this is just showing the tree and its sort of surroundings, obviously out of leaf. But you can see the proximity to both the path and the dwelling and the garden. And then this is a photo which is showing the area of fungal infection, which the tree officer has helpfully circled for us. So I'm not trying to identify it for you, but that's what the area is at the bottom there. So again, that's, I'm not going to pronounce the full name of it, but it's a soft rot fungus. Thank you. And that was taken in February 2025. And there's another sort of photo there. And then this is a more recent photo, which again, so the officer's gone back out and taken another photo in leaf. So you can see, obviously, I mean, it's a large tree. It's prominent within the open space, although there's a number of other trees there. It is quite a prominent feature within the landscape. The tree officer has noted, as you can see at the bottom there, the epicormic shoots at the base sort of hide the fungal symptoms. So whilst on the face of it, and superficially at this time of year, it looks like a healthy tree, it is the epicormic shoots are sort of hiding what's going on at the base. And I guess that also does make it more difficult to monitor going forward. Not impossible, but it's another factor, I guess, to consider. In terms of representations, as usual, the application was publicised by way of site notice. No representations were received from members of the public or a response from Rain Parish Council. So as I said, it's a lime tree, which is quite a tall specimen, prominent within the area. What's happened is the council's tree officers are carrying out routine inspections of the council's tree stock across the district. So when this tree was inspected, they've noticed the fungi infection, and their concern is that this fungus can cause soft rot in the roots and in the butt of the tree. What they've had to do as a result of that is consider what the best way to deal with the situation is. Their advice or their recommendation is that the tree should be felled and removed. They're concerned, given its height and proximity to paths and residential dwellings and garden spaces, that there would be a high risk that if the tree were to fail at root or at base level and the whole tree was to fall, that members of the public could be at risk. They have considered whether it would be possible to retain the tree and manage the risk. So as you can see there, they've outlined and within the report that it could, one option could be to reduce the tree in height and to carry out a more regular monitoring of the fungus. I think that there are definitely drawbacks of that. It doesn't remove the risk, it manages it, and it also becomes an additional additional issue in terms of resource for the tree officers to keep more regular inspections and monitoring of it. So given the context of the tree, the judgment of the fungus that it's been exposed to, the recommendation is that the tree is felled and removed. And there is a condition which would require that the tree is replaced the replacement planting would consider something which was obviously appropriate to the context and proximity of houses and so on, but also a tree species which wouldn't be vulnerable to the fungus which has affected this particular lime tree. So on that basis, with regret, because obviously nobody at the council would want to remove a tree which is protected by TPO unless it was absolutely necessary, we do recommend that consent is granted for the felling of a tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Members? Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's interesting to basically agree with the summary of the landscape and tree officers on this, because obviously this tree is already under sufficient stress from the fungal rot there, and of course I think it's not only dangerous to residents but it's also a potential danger to property, especially in maybe high wind conditions, and I think it's appropriate to be cautious in this respect, and I agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwer. Councillor Bathfield.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with what Councillor Schwer said. It's sad to lose a tree, but this is a classic example of, you have heard me say this so many times about the appropriate trees near houses. And this is not the appropriate tree to be put there, and we'll suffer with this. However, it's this council's responsibility that the trees are safe. And therefore, I can only support the officer's recommendation because it's professionals telling us that that's what it needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Yes, I sort of reluctantly support this. I hate taking trees down, particularly this one, which doesn't look that bad, but I've seen the consequences of mechanical failure of a large tree from rotting low down, when actually, if it had been spotted earlier, and that came down in a road actually, and a bus crashed into it many years ago, but it was only when it was inspected afterwards we realised why it had fallen over. In this case, it's been identified at this point. So yes, I think it is the right thing to do in this location, and there will be a replacement, so I'll support it.
So in that case, if no one else wishes to speak, we'd like to have somebody to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor Bassflint and Councillor Holland is seconding. Yeah. All those in favour of agreeing with the officer's recommendation. Okay, that is approved. Thank you very much, members. And that brings us to the end of our meeting this evening.